build up dam-like fortifications until the evil attacker turned the hose on, unleashing torrents of water. The battles usually were declared over when either the water broke through the defender's dam or Mom came back from the grocery store. The thrill of these games wore off, so Don and I resorted to more drastic measures, burning the little green men into puddles of goo. In the late 60s, before Ralph Nader halted all the fun in the world, the plastic used in those little army guys must have been toxic. They made the coolest zip, zip, zip noise with each burning drip. Evolved into lava tossing, where you flung the napalm-like substance at your opponent or brother as it dripped from the melting man. Mom stopped us before Ralph Nader did, though, because one day a big flaming blob of plastic sizzled its way onto my finger. I am reminded of this happily every time I type. Born in 1952, my oldest brother Mike was a child of the Cold War. The TV show, hands down, was Man from U.N.C.L.E., so everything he was interested in revolved around espionage. To protect sensitive information sent mostly from himself to himself, he spent hours creating elaborate codes and writing them into tiny paper books. There was the code of the pointing sticks, the words for numbers code, and who could forget the OORA code, off and on reversible alpha code. My brother Mike. When not saving the world from evil invaders, Mike was making stuff. Never one for those goofy shop class projects. Mike went right to the real deal, like a memory device, an electric stoplight over his doorway, and a metal locator. It made sense that Mike went into computers because his mind worked like one. He made lists of everything. Untrustworthy people, Don and I were often on it. His weekly income from 1959 through 1967, in cents. And secret hand-to-hand combat routines. To this day, I still rely on routine number 6 to, quote, run headlong into them and tackle them, unquote, whenever I'm confronted by an enemy. Engagement. This extensive list came in handy when it came time to determine the rules of our childhood. In a household of 3 boys, who were always tormenting each other, a system of rules and fines was drafted and strictly adhered to. Many contained wording that would make a contract lawyer proud, and all fines were, quote, payable on demand. It became our own brand of justice that addressed issues important to us all. Stating that Don owns half the hall in front of Don's room was a key property right. The rule, if Don or Bruce leaves or throws belongings in my room, they are mine unless they want to pay 20 cents, seemed a bit harsh, but I'm sure it was just Mike's way of saying, leave me the hell alone. Simple crimes like borrowing stuff without permission, names, or socking someone only cost the perpetrator 5 cents. Pure offenses like hanging around doorway, fooling with light switches, or Mike's legislative masterpiece, squealing when I want to look at something Don or Bruce has, shot up to 10 cents. Those were obviously the result of either a pet peeve or a very specific incident. There would otherwise be no explanation for the 20-cent fine of taking something from me while I was looking at it, or the 40-cent whopper for damaging rocket controls. In our draconian world, you could even be fined for suspicion. Some rules, however, did make sense. In headquarters of a garage fort, it was simply a matter of decency to place a ban on dirty boots or shoes, spelled D-I-R-T-E-Y, boots, or shoes, S-H-O-U-S, and, quote, letting gassers. Of course, all of these rules did absolutely nothing to stop the sibling abuse. Mike once laid out detailed plans to raid Don's left-hand drawer in his half of the room that he and I shared that included an overhead diagram, complete with escape routes and a comprehensive list of excuses to use if he got caught. Even though Don did hit, disobey, lie, steal stuff, and destroy, I don't think my mom would have let Mike off the hook. These raids happen so often, we each devise ways to protect our secret stuff. Things in every possible nook and cranny. I know because I went through them all. Don often moved his precious things around or hid them in secret books. With a sharp razor blade, usually from Dad's shaver, he hollowed out numerous hardcover masterpieces from the living room. It wasn't hard to spot which ones were bogus. War and Peace isn't usually paired with Cat in a Hat on a 10-year-old shelf. Dating each other's room was such a big deal, I had to do it as often as possible. One day, a plan to bother Don worked flawlessly. I raced into his room, made all kinds of noise, and stole a white gym sock. Don was close on my heels as I ran away down the hall and ducked into the bathroom. As he entered the doorway, he saw me flush what he thought was his sock down the toilet. "Do that for, I'll kill you." I had ditched Don's real sock as I entered the bathroom and flushed a strip of white toilet paper, pre-placed, into the septic tank. In the end, our fines evened out because Don promptly gave me a thrashing, roughly equal to my 30 cents worth of transgressions. I wouldn't have been surprised if Don invented a fine for pretending to flush socks down the toilet. The bathroom wasn't a reliable sanctuary. There was a lock on the door, sure, but it could easily be opened with a credit card. To combat this, a drawer by the door could be pulled out to block the way. This worked until Mike drilled a hole through the wall of our linen closet and rigged a coat hanger to the drawer itself. Down through the door one day, protected by the door lock, only to look down and see the drawer magically slide back in all by itself. "You were saying," Don said as he pushed the door open and began beating the grunt out of me. Real strength fun. In charge of building a playhouse in our backyard. The product wasn't some cute cardboard house with a couple of windows. It was a 3/4 scale tank. The plan was to make a mobile war machine that could presumably attack things and or people. Taking into account all materials needed to build the tank, including plywood, 2x4s, steering wheel, gun barrel, catapult, rubber slings, mirrors, fan belt, a pulley system, Mike estimated that the total weight would be 387.5 pounds with occupants. The only scheme that never came to bear was mounting the damn thing on Dad's riding lawnmower. Against attacking neighbors, we armed ourselves with cracker balls, rolls of caps, sparklers, balloons, squirt guns, slingshot rifles, rubber band shooters, and the dreaded ivory liquid detergent bottles, the super soaker of their day. We used to beg Mom to buy the Ivory brand bottles because they had the best nozzles and could blast water the farthest. Mike was the best at this because his hands were stronger. With a good squeeze, he could drench Don or me from 20 feet away. Over time, we learned to rinse the bottles out well. A soapy shot in the eye could ruin your whole afternoon. So building a tank only fueled other summer projects, like the tunnel. To protect ourselves from parental meddling, we always referred to it by the backward code name of Linnet. Very smart. The first challenge was to choose a good dig site. To ensure privacy, we picked a spot in the adjacent woods, but we had to be careful because tunneling too close to a large tree meant hassling with roots. Once we had the site, we excavated the horizontal trench and reinforced the sides with 2x4s. This was then covered with plywood, 6 inches of dirt, and plenty of camouflage. We could begin digging the main shaft, which went straight down until we hit water. To communicate with the outside world, a garden hose was lowered through a hole in the roof. Playtime in the Linnet was anything but. It was back-breaking work. After school, on weekends, and even during vacations, we'd dig with hand trowels, chop and burn off roots, reinforce the walls, then dig some more. To provide a better work environment, Mike came up with an ingenious method of providing candlelight in a series of carved alcoves and even manufactured glow-in-the-dark candles from phosphorescent crayons. What a freak. Don squealed about the use of candles, which was forbidden, and Dad gave the order to fill it in. But soon thereafter, Mike built a doghouse, supposedly for our basset hound, but it was ultimately just a front for a hidden tunnel entrance, and we started the process all over again. I came home at lunch with grass stains. Mike, Don, and I were a little more earthy than that, but it dawned on us that we could apply our extensive landscaping knowledge to a project that wouldn't collapse. We wouldn't get our knees muddy, and it didn't fill up with water every 10 days. A golf course. Ebbing Miniature Golf Course was next door in neighbor Mike Ebbing's backyard. This club turned out to be very exclusive, mainly since few people actually played it, and our rule book, as you might expect, was more restrictive than the PGA's. People who brought in forged certificates or coupons, for example, were to be escorted off the grounds, a measure that also applied to people with malicious intentions, whatever that meant. No other vendors could sell their goods on or near the course, unless a vast majority of the profits, between 80 and 90%, went directly to the organizers. We didn't even give cut rates for people who brought their own clubs or balls. rampant overmanaging, we did make money. 37 cents one day, $1.72 another. I lost interest in this venture when Don caught me in the bridge of my nose with a wicked backswing. Soon, Brother Mike was old enough to be more interested in girls and cars, so Don and I had to tackle any new construction projects by ourselves. It is all about trees, so we decided to build the mother of all tree forts in the Tyler's backyard. Our growing neighborhood provided all the building materials we would ever need. At any one time, there would be a half-dozen homes under construction within walking distance. Don and I would sneak out at night under the guise of going to Scott Tyler's house and haul rolls of tar paper, wood scraps, and nails through the woods back to our house. The palace was impressive. There was a main level comprised of a rumpus room with several, quote, guest rooms off each side. The second story was a smaller single room, and above it was a crow's nest. Don was the only one who ventured up there because it was just too high. Built over an entire summer, this wasn't a fort, it was a fortress, with a shingled roof, wall-to-wall carpeting, and power, thanks to a buried extension cord to the Tyler's